I've always liked driving during heavy rain. There's something about the way it empties the road, like the world quietly stepping aside for a while. Headlights blur, sounds soften, and everything feels slower, more contained. That night, the rain was coming down hard enough to demand my full attention, which is why I remember this clearly. I wasn't distracted. I wasn't tired. And I definitely wasn't imagining what happened next. Story 1. I stopped to help on the highway. No one was there. I was heading back alone, taking Highway 17 like I always did. It wasn't especially late, but late enough that traffic should have thinned out. Normally, you still see trucks, the occasional bus, a few impatient cars pushing past the speed limit. That night, the road felt abandoned. No headlights in my mirrors, none ahead of me. Just the steady rhythm of rain against the windshield and the low hum of tires on wet asphalt. I checked my phone at a red light earlier and noticed I had no signal, but that wasn't unusual out there, so I didn't think much of it. About 30 minutes into the drive, I saw orange cones stretched across the highway. I slowed down, expecting flashing lights or at least a police cruiser parked nearby. There was nothing, just a reflective sign standing crooked in the rain that read, "Road closed, use detour." The arrow pointed toward a narrow service road branching off to the right, partially hidden by trees. I sat there for a moment, watching rainwater pool around the cones, trying to decide if I should turn around. But there was nowhere convenient to do that, and the detour looked short enough, so I followed it. The service road felt wrong almost immediately. No streetlights, no painted lines, just wet pavement cutting through dense trees. Rain hammered down on the leaves overhead, creating a constant hiss that drowned out everything else. I drove slowly, gripping the steering wheel tighter than I realized, reminding myself that this was just a temporary inconvenience. That's when I noticed headlights ahead. Relief hit instantly. Another car meant I wasn't completely alone. But as I got closer, I saw that the car wasn't moving. It was parked on the shoulder, hazard lights blinking weakly, the driver's side door hanging open as rain poured straight into the interior. I pulled over a short distance behind it and rolled my window down slightly, calling out to see if anyone was there. At first, there was no response. Then a man stepped out from the darkness near the trees. He was tall and thin, wearing a dark raincoat, and he stopped just outside the reach of my headlights, close enough that I could see his outline clearly, far enough that his face stayed indistinct. He lifted one hand in a slow wave and said his car wouldn't start. His voice was calm, oddly steady for someone stranded in the middle of nowhere during a storm like this. I asked if he needed me to call someone. He paused just for a second and then said there was a checkpoint further up the road where officers were redirecting traffic. That confused me. I had just come from the closure and hadn't seen anyone. Still, I unlocked my doors. I don't know why I did. As he walked toward my car, something small but unsettling caught my attention. His raincoat wasn't wet, not damp, not even darkened by moisture. It looked completely dry, like he'd just stepped out of a building. He got into the passenger seat without hesitation, closing the door gently behind him. The inside of my car suddenly felt smaller. I asked where the checkpoint was exactly, and he pointed ahead, down the service road, saying it wasn't far. As I started driving again, I noticed something else. Rain was streaming down my side windows, but the glass on his side stayed oddly clear, as if the water avoided it. I told myself it was just the angle, just the lighting, but I couldn't stop glancing over at him. We drove in silence for a few minutes, the only sound the rain and the occasional squeak of my wipers. Then he spoke again, asking how often I used this road. I told him not much. He nodded, smiling faintly, and said most people didn't notice when things changed out here. I asked what he meant by that, but he didn't answer. Instead, he told me to slow down. There was a bend in the road ahead. I hadn't seen any sign of a curve, but I eased off the accelerator anyway. The road straightened out, and that's when I realized something was seriously wrong. We had been driving for far too long. The detour should have looped back onto the highway by now, but the trees looked the same, the road unbroken, the rain relentless. I asked him again where the checkpoint was. This time he turned to look at me. For the first time I saw his face clearly. There was nothing obviously wrong with it. No injuries, no strange features, but his expression didn't match his eyes. He was smiling, but his eyes were flat, unreadable, like he was studying me. He told me to pull over. I refused. The smile faded instantly. He reached down and pressed his hand flat against the dashboard. That's when the engine died. The headlights cut out. The wipers stopped mid-swipe. Suddenly, the only sound was rain hitting the roof and my own breathing. I tried turning the key. Nothing. I reached for my phone, still no signal. I told him to get out of my car. He didn't move. Instead, he leaned closer and said very quietly that it was easier if I stopped fighting it. I don't remember deciding to run. I just did. I shoved the door open and stumbled out into the rain, my shoes slipping on the wet pavement. I ran without looking back, hearing him laugh behind me, a low sound that blended too well with the rain. I didn't know where I was going, only that I needed distance. After what felt like forever, I tripped and fell hard onto the road, scraping my hands and knees. When I looked up, my car was gone. The road behind me was empty, stretching into darkness, as if it had always been that way. The next thing I remember clearly is waking up under bright lights. I was in the back of an ambulance, rain still pounding somewhere outside. Paramedics asked me what happened, where I was hurt. My hands were bleeding, my knees raw, but otherwise I was fine. I tried to explain about the detour, the man, the car, but the words sounded wrong even to me. Later, at the station, police told me they found me walking along the highway, disoriented and alone. They said there was no service road where I described it. No abandoned car, no roadblock, just Highway 17, open and empty. I went back a few days later during daylight. I drove the same route, even waited for rain. There were no cones, no detour, no service road cutting into the trees, just a guardrail and dense forest. I still drive that highway sometimes, but never during heavy rain. Because every now and then, when the road is empty and the rain is loud enough, I swear I see hazard lights blinking just beyond the tree line, waiting for someone else to stop. If you enjoy slow, realistic horror stories that don't rely on jump scares, consider subscribing. These are the kinds of stories that stay quiet until it's too late. And if you're listening tonight while the rain is falling, keep the volume just high enough. Some details are easy to miss. Story 2. He was standing ahead of me again. I was driving home alone, taking a stretch of highway that cuts through long miles of undeveloped land. No exits for a while, no gas stations, just road and trees. Normally there's still traffic, even late, but that night the highway was empty. No headlights behind me, none coming toward me. Just wet asphalt reflecting my own beams back at me. My phone had lost signal about 10 minutes earlier, but that was normal out there, so I didn't think twice about it. I first noticed something was wrong when I saw the hazard lights. They were faint at first, barely visible through the rain, blinking steadily on the shoulder ahead. I slowed down, assuming it was a broken-down car. As I got closer, I realized it was a highway maintenance truck, one of the kind used for inspections and emergency response. It was pulled halfway off the road, angled awkwardly, like whoever stopped hadn't done it carefully. The driver's door was open, rain pouring straight into the cab. I pulled over several yards behind it and turned on my own hazards. The rain was loud when I stepped out, soaking my jacket almost instantly. I called out, asking if anyone was there if they needed help. At first, there was nothing but rain. Then a voice answered me. A man's voice, calm and strained at the same time, coming from somewhere ahead of the truck. He said he was stuck and needed help getting to the next emergency turnout. I walked closer, shining my phone's flashlight toward the cab. The inside of the truck was empty, no driver, no passenger. The engine was still running, gauges lit up, windshield wipers scraping uselessly back and forth. I checked behind the truck, then the ditch beside the road, expecting to see someone hurt or stuck in the mud. There were no footprints, not on the road, not in the wet grass, nothing leading away from the vehicle at all. That's when I felt it, that sudden, unmistakable sense that I shouldn't be there. It wasn't fear exactly. It was more like the feeling you get when you realize you've misunderstood a situation too late. I stepped back from the truck, rain running down my face, and told myself I should get back to my car and call for help once I had signal again. As I turned away, the voice called out again. This time it was closer, close enough that I instinctively looked over my shoulder. I saw no one. The shoulder was empty, the trees dark and unmoving. The voice asked me why I was leaving. It sounded confused, almost hurt. I didn't answer. I started walking faster, then jogging, boots slipping slightly on the wet pavement. Halfway back to my car, I heard footsteps behind me, not splashing through puddles like mine were, but soft, steady steps that didn't match the sound of the rain. I didn't turn around. I got into my car, slammed the door, and locked it immediately. My hands were shaking as I started the engine. In the rearview mirror, I saw a figure standing near the maintenance truck, tall, still, watching. I pulled back onto the highway and drove, faster than I should have in that rain. I kept checking my mirrors, expecting to see headlights following me, but there were none. The road stretched on, empty and dark, rain pouring down relentlessly. After a few minutes, my phone buzzed as signal briefly returned. I tried calling emergency services, but the call dropped almost immediately. Several miles later, I saw flashing lights ahead. A police cruiser was parked near an overpass, hazard lights reflecting off the wet road. Relief hit me so hard I almost laughed. I pulled over and told the officer everything, the truck, the voice, the footprints that weren't there. He listened quietly, then asked me to wait while he checked something. When he came back, his expression had changed. He told me there hadn't been any maintenance trucks assigned to that stretch of highway that night. No breakdowns reported, no emergency calls. He asked if I was sure I hadn't stopped at a different location. I insisted I knew exactly where it was. He said he'd check anyway. I stayed there for almost an hour while another cruiser went out to search. When they came back, they told me they found nothing. No truck, no tire marks, no sign that anyone had stopped there recently. The officer suggested I might have mistaken a reflection or another vehicle in the rain. He was polite, but I could tell he didn't believe me. I drove home after that, hands still trembling on the steering wheel. I didn't sleep much that night. A few days later, once the rain had stopped, I went back during the daytime. I drove the same stretch of highway slowly, scanning both shoulders. There was no pull-off where I remembered stopping, no signs of a truck having ever been there, just wet grass and trees pressed close to the road. I still drive that highway. I don't really have a choice, but I never stop anymore, no matter what I see. Because sometimes, when the rain is heavy and the road is empty, I swear I hear footsteps pacing my car just outside the sound of the storm, keeping perfect time, waiting for me to pull over again. If you enjoy realistic horror stories that unfold slowly and leave more questions than answers, consider subscribing. These stories aren't meant to shock you all at once. They're meant to stay with you, especially on nights when the rain is loud and the road is empty. Story 3. The night I learned not to pull over in the rain. I've always found something calming about driving in heavy rain at night. The highway empties out, the noise of the world softens, and it feels like you're moving through a narrow corridor of light, disconnected from everything else. That night, the rain was relentless, pouring down hard enough to blur the road signs and soak the asphalt into a mirror. I remember thinking it was the kind of weather that forces you to stay alert, which is why I've never doubted my memory of what happened. I had just finished a late shift and was heading home along a long stretch of highway that cuts through miles of undeveloped land. No streetlights, no businesses, just trees and road for as far as you can see. Normally there's still traffic, even at that hour, but that night the highway was almost completely empty. I hadn't seen another car in at least 15 minutes. My phone had lost signal earlier, but that was normal out there, so I didn't think much of it. About halfway through that stretch, I noticed something unusual up ahead. At first, it was just a shape in the rain standing near the shoulder. As I got closer, my headlights caught a person, a man standing just off the road facing traffic. He wasn't trying to flag anyone down. He was just standing there, motionless, rain pouring down around him. I slowed instinctively, my foot hovering over the brake. He wasn't wearing a jacket. Just dark pants and a thin shirt, already plastered to his body by the rain. I told myself there was probably a simple explanation. A broken down car nearby, someone waiting for help. Still, something about the way he was standing bothered me. He wasn't looking at my car. His head was tilted slightly, like he was listening to something I couldn't hear. As I passed him, I glanced in my side mirror. He turned his head and watched me go by. I drove another quarter-mile before guilt got the better of me. Leaving someone out there in that weather didn't sit right. I slowed, pulled onto the shoulder, and put my car in reverse. When my headlights swept back over the spot where he'd been standing, my stomach dropped. The road was empty, no man, no footprints, just rain hammering the pavement. I sat there for a moment, heart pounding, scanning the tree line with my brights. That's when I heard a knock, not on the road, on my passenger side window. I nearly jumped out of my seat. He was standing right there, inches from the glass, rain running down his face. I hadn't seen him approach. He smiled slightly and asked if I could give him a ride. His voice was calm, conversational, like this was the most normal thing in the world. I told him to step back. I don't remember deciding to say that, it just came out. His smile twitched like I'd surprised him. He asked again, more insistently this time. I shook my head and locked the doors, my hands shaking as I put the car back into drive. As I pulled away, I saw him step into the road behind me, standing dead center in my lane, watching me leave. I drove faster than I should have in that rain, checking my mirrors constantly. For a while there was nothing, just road, rain, and darkness. I started to convince myself I'd imagined the whole thing, that exhaustion and weather had messed with my head. That's when my headlights caught something ahead, another figure standing in the road. My heart slammed into my chest. It was him, same clothes, same posture. There was no way he could have gotten ahead of me that fast. I swerved instinctively, tires sliding on the wet asphalt, and barely missed him. I didn't slow down, I didn't stop. I just kept driving, my pulse roaring in my ears. A few miles later, I finally saw the glow of lights ahead. An exit. Civilization. I pulled off the highway and into a gas station parking lot, shaking so badly I had trouble turning off the engine. I sat there for a long time, watching rain streak down the windshield, replaying everything in my head. When I finally worked up the nerve to get out, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. Wet footprints led from the edge of the lot straight to my driver's side door. They stopped there. There were no footprints leading away. I went inside the gas station and told the clerk what had happened. He looked at me like I was exhausted or drunk, but he called the police anyway. When they arrived, I explained everything again. They drove back along the highway with me, headlights sweeping the shoulders, radios crackling softly. They didn't find anyone, no reports of stranded pedestrians, no calls. One of the officers suggested the rain might have distorted my depth perception. Another asked if I'd been under a lot of stress lately. They left after a while and I drove home, every shadow on the road making my heart race. I didn't sleep much that night. Around 3 a.m, I heard something outside. Footsteps, slow, wet, moving along the side of my house. I lay there barely breathing, listening as they stopped just outside my bedroom window. I didn't look. I didn't move. After a while, they faded away. The next day I checked outside. There were no footprints, no sign anyone had been there. I still drive that highway sometimes. I don't have much choice, but I never stop anymore. And on nights when the rain is heavy and the road is empty, I keep my eyes straight ahead. Because sometimes, just beyond the reach of my headlights, I swear I see someone standing there, waiting for me to make the same mistake again. If you stayed till the end, thank you for listening. Stories like these aren't meant to scare you all at once. They're meant to linger, especially on nights when the rain is loud and the roads are empty. If you enjoy slow, realistic horror like this, consider subscribing. And if you're driving tonight, maybe don't stop for anyone you don't recognize.